For more on COVID and schools, let's bring in ABC News medical contributor and infectious disease specialist, Dr. Todd Ellerin. Dr. Ellerin, good morning to you. Always great to see you. We just saw in Steve's piece there the new CDC report finding little evidence of COVID transmission in schools within the classroom, but we're seeing some districts like Chicago, the teachers union, this has been an issue in New York as well, urging its staffers to work remotely. What do you make of this new CDC report?
Well, I think Steve just laid out the evidence very clearly. There's little evidence that there's any meaningful spread of COVID-19 in the classrooms. You just saw this CDC study from Wisconsin. The risk of transmission in the community is greater than in the classroom. Why is that? Because our infection prevention measures in the classrooms are working. De-densifying these classrooms, universal masking, making sure there's physical distancing, especially between the teachers and the students. All of these things are minimizing transmission risks. What does that all mean? The teachers have to lead with the science. We have to get our kids back into the classroom. It's not contributing to increased transmission. And multiple studies, not just the Wisconsin one, other ones from Mississippi, from North Carolina, are all saying the same things. Teachers are not getting infected by their students. Teachers who get infected, much more likely to be infected back at home or in the community at large.
Yeah, I could speak to my kids' school. They were in a hybrid system, and it's done really well. Even cases that have come back positive within the classroom, they weren't spreading among the kids or the staff there. But I do want to ask you, because over the past few weeks, we've seen a 16% increase still of cases of coronavirus in children. What do you think is behind that if it's not happening within the school?
Right. So remember, our children are a microcosm of the community. When you see increased community transmission, as we've seen, especially in the fall, in the winter, as it's gotten colder, as we're spending more time indoors, of course, we're going to see more children get infected. The key is, and you showed that graph nicely, it's not happening within the classroom. By the way, Whit, remember, a recent study from the CDC showed many more young adults, 18 to 24, are getting infected than the younger age group. And the younger you are, the less likely you are to be infected with COVID-19 or transmit it to someone else.
Oh, it's certainly encouraging news. I do want to turn to some of the updates on the vaccines, though, because there's this potential Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which would be the third to come online in the U.S. It's moving closer to FDA consideration. How would this vaccine be different than the ones that we've seen produced by Pfizer and Moderna? And has Johnson & Johnson addressed how it will fare in combating these new world variants that we've seen spreading now in the U.S.?
Well, that's a packed question. There's a lot to get through here. So importantly, Johnson & Johnson is the first company in a phase 3 trial to have a single-dose vaccine. Single dose. Their phase 1 and 2 data showed a very robust immune response. So we're very hopeful about that. But I do want to point out something interesting. 2 months into their phase 3 trial, they added another cohort, which are individual study participants that are going to receive 2 doses 2 months apart. Now, why did they do that? Obviously, Johnson & Johnson's very resourced. You could say they don't want to have all their eggs in one basket. They want to have a recipe for success no matter what. But also it's possible that maybe they saw a signal that certain participants may not have had the immune response or were getting infected. So you could imagine something where the single dose is very good for young, healthy adults 18 to 55, but perhaps they're going to need to use the 2-dose regimen for older adults or people with chronic morbidities. Again, we don't know. It's still a candidate vaccine. But very importantly, if we can get that first dose, if we can get single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine into the mix, that will massively improve the logistics. And remember, the J&J vaccine does not need to be frozen. It can be refrigerated. Again, another huge logistical decompression that we sorely need. The last thing I'll say is the clinical trials are international, and there are a number of sites in South Africa and Brazil. So we will have a hint at how well the J&J vaccine is doing in parts of the world where we're hearing that there are more variants.
And what I wanted to ask you about that, we know that the timeline for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, we're hearing maybe a couple of weeks when they would apply for FDA authorization. But you touched on this with Johnson & Johnson, but also Moderna and Pfizer are looking at ways to alter their current vaccines to address these variants, correct?
Yeah, it's a good point. Something I didn't say, and I should have. The J&J platform is actually using an adenovirus vector, okay? That it's a virus. It is replication defective, so you can't get the infected with this virus that's carrying the genes for the spike protein. That's very important to say. But remember something. The AstraZeneca Oxford group also is using an adenovirus vector. It's a different one. It's a chimp as opposed to a human one like Johnson & Johnson. But remember, we were a little disappointed in the overall effectiveness with the AstraZeneca Oxford. It came in around 70%, which would have been great compared to influenza shots. But with the results of Pfizer and Moderna at 95%, we were disappointed with that. So another important part of these results is to see, can J&J's results really be exceptional like Pfizer or Moderna, or is it going to fall in line with more modest effectiveness like AstraZeneca Oxford? Importantly, there is still, and they've already announced, they're going to be slow in the beginning to be able to scale up the manufacturing. But good news, these adenovirus, these viral vectors, you can churn out much more vaccine, even more than the messenger RNA platforms. So I'm feeling optimistic, but these vaccines can't get here faster.
That's true. And speaking of that speed, one other follow-up question there. President Biden announced a number of things to sort of speed up that rollout, including 200 million more doses from Pfizer and Moderna, which would be enough in theory to vaccinate the entire U.S. population by the end of the summer. Is that going to be enough, though, in your opinion? Because we've also seen issues in just getting those shots into arms once they reach the states.
All right, again, this is really important. So let's follow this. In the beginning, for every 3 doses that were being distributed in the United States, 1 dose was getting into our arms, okay? More recently, we've seen that we've closed the administration gap to about 2 to 1. For every 2 doses distributed, 1 is getting into our arms. So we are doing better. We're ramping up. Think of this like testing, okay? We were slow to start, but we really picked up speed. The same is going to be happening with the vaccine. We need to close the administration gap, but we also have to get a lot more vaccine out there, especially as we expand the priority groups, right? Once you start saying 65 and older, that's 50 million people that are going to be expecting the vaccine. So, you know, we really have to ramp this up. We can't roll this out like it's a glorified influenza vaccine campaign. This has to be the most historic and aggressive campaign in the history of the United States.
No question about that. Dr. Todd Ellerin, thank you so much for your time. We always appreciate it. All right, you too.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.